window, I don't care about the very detailed ins and outs of your window frame. We're just going to build it as basic rectangles. All right. So this is a window. I'm just going to build that window frame. And again, there's a lot of different ways of doing it. I'm going to build it as if it's called a stick system, right? Where it's just basically building the bottom, the top, the sides, and you're going to call it a day. So that is, let's see, I could do this by building a box. I'll show you how to do it if we're doing a polyline also. So if I do a box, I just draw a box along the base of my window, and I'm going to extrude that 2 inches. Let's put this on. Do I have a window frame layer? No, I don't. So let's create a window. So 3D window, and I'll call it frame so I could differentiate. And the color, let's leave it white. Let's make that my current layer. Let's put this on my 3D window. Right? That's a window frame. Now, now that window frame, that bottom of my window frame, that sill is basically the same size as the wall. Now, if I wanted to get detailed, which I should, I can take this and just kind of make it a little bit wider. I can pull that out by, you know, 1/2 inch or so it sticks out from the window wall, the wall a little bit, right? Maybe I could go a little bit more, a little bit less, whatever the case may be, right? So that's the bottom. Top, fairly simple. Drag that up to the top. Can't see the bottom of that, so can't really click it. All right, so that's the top. Oh, where did my monocle? There it is. And then for the sides, very similar, right? I could build a box or I could draw it as a P line. So let me draw it as a P line this time around. So I'll draw it from this to here, 2 inches wide, across, close, then extrude this from there to the top. And then I'll copy this over to the far side. And that's a basic window frame, right? Now, if I have a window that is divided, then I could copy these up, whatever that location is. Move this to the midpoint. All right, let's clean this up a little bit. Let's go to X-ray, right? So I move that up and it's kind of coming across my window. I could pull this back so that it aligns with my window. That starts to look like a double hung window, right? I could put some more smaller mullions across this to make that look like an actual piece of like an actual window sash, right? And again, for that, I can do, again, I could do a, let's do it this way. Let's draw the profile of that. So let's say it's only about 1 inch by 1 inch by 1 inch by 1 inch close. I'm going to move this to the center of this mullion and extrude this up to the height of this. Okay. So that's a mullion. That's a vertical mullion. I could then continue and add even more detail to this by, again, I'm just drawing rectangles here and I'm just extruding them. The trick is really just putting them in the right places, right? So if I extrude this again, 1 inch, I can move this up to the midpoint of this mullion and copy or mirror this over to the other side. Right, and that starts to look a little bit more like a window. If you have more of these, all right, you can move them down. That looks a little bit high. Let's move this another 2 inches. That's 8. Right, maybe there's another one here. Whatever the divisions are of your window is, right? Maybe the top has divisions, the bottom don't. I mean, that's fairly typical for some places. Sometimes there's none. Maybe it's just one big opening, right? That's how you get those sort of mullions in there. Again, you could clean this up as well. You could union all of these things if you wanted to. I'll do let's union these. Let's see what happens. If I union this, right, that cleans it up a little bit. Okay, so that's a window. Now, this is where it gets a little bit more, not complicated, but you have to really start to visualize the 3D aspects of everything. So right now I have this window opening, but there's no glass in there, right? It doesn't really look like there's glass. So there's a couple of things you could do. You can actually build the glass and model it. The problem is that if you model it out of something solid, you're not going to see through it because it's going to be solid, right? So what you can do is you can actually put a hatch in here to make that look like there's a surface on there. It's actually kind of transparent. And I'll do that in the open window just so you can see it a little bit more clearly. And after that, we can actually move it over to this window to cover it, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to use a hatch. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to move our UCS so that it's on this plane of this wall, right? Because when you do something like a 2-dimensional hatch, it's always going to be placing it on where the UCS, just like what we just talked about with Zoe, right? So if I do that, what I can do is I could, again, click my UCS, drag it to right there in the middle of my wall, right? And I want my X to be horizontal and my Y to be vertical. So it's a little bit hard to see, but I'm going to drag my X and then rotate it so that it's in that direction. And then my Y is now pointing up. So my X and Y, right? My X and Y UCS is right in the middle of this wall. And it's running vertically. X and Y is running vertically. Now when I go and try to hatch, is hatch even here anymore, or does it get rid of it? Nope, it's here. I can hatch inside that area, and I wonder if it'll find it for me. If I click inside this window opening, it actually finds the boundary, and I can actually put a hatch on it. Right now, I'm just using a crisscross hatch, right? Doesn't look that great. I could change this scale to make it look wider, right? If I wanted to have some sort of pattern in my glass, fine. But what's even better is that I can do this. I can pick a solid hatch, which again makes it solid. If I did that, what I can do is, hold on, I have to move my screen down because it's kind of blocking. My Zoom window is blocking it. Let's go back to the hatch, right? So I could change its transparency. So if I crank the transparency up, you can see it's getting more and more transparent, right? So if there was something behind it, let's say I go into this direction, I change that transparency, it becomes more or less transparent. So I can start to see through it, like almost as if it's window tint, right? In addition to that, what I can also use, if I don't want to use just a solid hatch with a transparency, I can go all the way to the bottom and I could use any of these other hatches, these gradient hatches. So I could use, let's say, something like this. I don't know, something like that for now, right? And I could set that gradient to be a specific color. So one color will be, again, you could pick whatever it is that you want. You know, if we start off with blue, let's do a lighter blue, and it transitions to maybe a darker blue. I don't know, right? And then again, the transparency, I could adjust the transparency a little bit, but you can see that I can start to see through this, right? I can change the angle of that so that instead of vertical, it rotates a little bit to give it maybe some visual interest. Right, so if I make it 0 transparency, I can't see through it at all. If I make it 90% transparent, which is I think the highest it'll go, it'll make it transparent that way. So if it's done, I can click OK, right? And you can see that there is sort of like a surface on there now, right? And I could tell that there's some layer there. So now if I'm happy with that, I could copy this hatch and move it from this window to this window if it's the same size. And now that window appears to have a piece of glass in it. Right now, again, I'm picking that transparency level. I could tone this down a little bit so it becomes a different shade. I could change the color a little bit to have that read a little bit better. And again, that's completely up to you. And then if you're